Yeah, I kind of like that new intro. Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's Wednesday, the 17th of September, 9:22 p.m. And as is my custom, I don't have anything definitive on my mind. Yeah, I know you think I'm joking, but every night when I do this podcast and I sit down to do it, just as I'm clicking the start button, I think, oh, you should skip tonight. You don't have anything to say, Bruce. And I literally show up here every night and I really don't know what I'm going to do. Now, I will admit that I do have a general stream of contemplative content going through my mind or the transom of my consciousness during the day, very similar to Leopold Bloom and Ulysses. Um, I want to say that I am just loving getting back into reading. It's been about a decade. I mean, reading was a big, big deal for me in Canada. I mean, I was not rich, but I probably spent somewhere around 10 or 15% of my disposable income on books. I had a huge library. I had like 400 books. And I gave them all away when I came to Costa Rica, mainly to my one friend. His name is Jamie Stathoukas. And nice guy, Greek. And we became friends. We had sons the same age, and we became friends as single dads. He went on to marry a wonderful Scottish woman, like from Scotland. A lot of Scots in Canada, but after 12 generations, are you still Scottish, right? That's actually an excellent question, because it's my understanding there's more Gaelic spoken in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia in Canada than there is in Ireland and Scotland combined. So maybe it is the New Scotland, the Nova Scotia. And it's a beautiful part of the country, Halifax. Gorgeous. I gave all my books to Jamie and Michelle, and man, there must have been like, I don't know, like $10,000 worth of books if you just go by the cover price. And I used to go to Chapters all the time. And then when I came over here, I came over with the collected poems of Kabir, one of my favorite spiritual teachers. And that was about it. And then I would read PDFs, download a lot of PDFs. It's actually not true that I gave up reading. I read a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of white papers. I read a lot of foreign policy think tank intellectual proffers, like Chatham House, Foreign Affairs, the Bilderberger Group, Council on Foreign Relations. I would read all their long analysis. The cool guy you think is podcasting to you is actually just, I am the biggest geek ever. Like, I'm a geek. Not like a computer hacker geek, but a different kind of geek. And, but now, with this incredible tablet, I'll do my infomercial here. This iPad M3, it's just gorgeous. And I'll just show you quickly like what it's like to read on this. What do I got? Oh, the collected poems of William Carlos Williams, which I was reading today. And I got all these books to get through now, and boy, I'll tell you, this is like I shouldn't turn away from the mic. Well, you can still hear me, I guess, but this is like the coolest reading library I have. There's my stuff: Stardust Ranch, Light of Darkness, all of James Joyce. It just goes on and on and on. So now there's The Stolen Child, God is an Economist. I highly recommend these two books, by the way. I'm a really good writer. I never got my due. But I segued into this new form of writing. All of Rilke, William Carlos Williams, Philip Larkin. I mean, if you don't know who these people are, and you're American, shame on you, man. Like, shame on you. This is cool stuff. It's not fruity like going to the ballet. Although I hear people really like that. And now, I'm going through this Japanese phase now. So I'm reading Haruki Murakami and this dude who is considered Natsumi Soseki. And he's considered Japan's greatest writer of the 20th century. And it's super cool stuff, man. You know, it's an interesting thing to note that the only literature that we read in the West from Asia is from Japan. They're the only ones that have taken up storytelling and novel writing. And this is not a byproduct of the colonization post World War II in Bretton Woods. They had serious writers before World War II. And I got to tell you, the Japanese mind and the Japanese consciousness is absolutely fascinating to me. They live a kind of hybrid of reality and imagination that I don't think we have anymore in the West. And this is why I think so many people find it difficult to understand Japan as a culture, even if they've lived there decades. You hear this all the time from long-term residents who are not born to Japan and who are not of a Japanese family, that you can live there forever and never fully understand the culture. And part of the reason is the Japanese are like, there's a part of the Japanese consciousness that is just, it's tripping all the time, like ayahuasca. There's something special about these people. I'm telling you, it's weird. So I'm going through. What I'm gonna try and do is catch up with the last 4 or 5 books of Haruki Murakami. I read most of his books. He started publishing in 1979. And I read most of his books up until about when I came over here, 2014. And yeah, I pirate the books. I mean, I could with the tablet, I could buy them off Amazon, but they're all just sitting up there on Pirate Bay, right? So, and I think as a writer, me personally, if you read a pirate EPUB of my book and you loved the book and sent me an email, I wouldn't really give a shit. I think, but I don't write as a form of living. I don't write creatively as a form of living. So it's a bit different. What else is new that I can start the show with? Okay, so I got 2 27-inch Xiaomi Xiamoi. It's a Chinese brand in electronics. They do phones and computers and tablets and stuff, and I'm getting these really good full HD 27-inch monitors, 2 of them. They were supposed to be here today being delivered from San Jose, but I think the truck got lost. I live in a very remote place. And people, like even Costa Ricans, they're a little bit nervous about coming to my province. Like, my province is the Wild West. It's El Salvador in like pre-Bukele. Not quite that bad, but 60%. Huge enterprise of narco trafficking, and it is what it is. If you stay out of the business, you're not going to have any problems. So I'm really looking forward to getting those 2 monitors tomorrow. Man, I've gone through like 5 monitors up here. It's a shit show. I mean, every time I get a friggin' monitor, and I'll tell you why. Monitors are very, very susceptible to dirty electrical current. And the dirty electrical current is improperly metered electricity. And so I have these surge boxes. I could actually turn the camera around. And in fact, well, it's a mess of cables. You'll think I'm a total animal, so I'm not going to show you. But I have these like battery boxes. So if there's a power outage, my computer and monitor will stay on for 30 minutes. And a lot of the power outages, they're flickers. And they only last like a second. But they shut down the modem. And then I got to wait. If I'm on a call, I get cut off. It doesn't happen that often. And the computers are fine. And the TV is fine. Most of my electronics are fine. But the monitors are particularly susceptible to these flashes of energy and stuff. And so I go through a lot of monitors here. A monitor lasts me about a year and a half. I don't know why that is. I got this one now that's been going for about a year and a half. It's still in top shape. It's a 24-inch HP high definition, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I like a good 27-inch monitor. All right, so that's my long-winded introduction to my day in my life up here. I got the Montero all fixed up now. I had a problem. I had to change the tube on the gas tank because when I would get close to filling up, it would start pouring out underneath the car. And people do a double take, right? Diesel's not that dangerous to have fluid on the ground. It's much harder to light diesel. But people don't know on first glance whether you're driving a diesel or a gas vehicle. And so when you start like dumping gas on the ground at the gas station, everybody sort of like takes 2 steps back, right? Like it could blow. So I got that fixed. And there was one other thing. I can't remember what it was on the Montero. I mean, it's a 35-year-old vehicle. It's a 1990. Now, the engine's much newer than that. My stepson got that for me, and I don't ask any questions, but I got it for a really good price, and it's a really good turbo diesel engine. So this vehicle will just keep going for another 10 years. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, and then I'm building another house. I ordered all the material today. All of the wall material. It's a prefabricated concrete building methodology that's really popular in Central America. It's going to be 973 square feet, which is pretty big for a one-story home. 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And I'm building that as an adjunct to the tourism business as well. I have a lot of ideas. I want to do like a house that people can stay at, like 4, 5, 6, 8 people, and then provide a transportation service for them to the departure point for the best whitewater rafting in Costa Rica, which is in my province. And there's no good, reasonably priced hotels. All the hotels associated with the rafting tours, you can pay upwards of $1,000 for a suite at their jungle resort. And the rafting is included, but a lot of people, the rafting itself, if you just buy a ticket and you have your own vehicle and you show up and you take care of all your own logistics like drop off and pick up, the rafting ticket's only $65 US, and it's like 4 or 5 hours on the river. It's a blast. The river, depending on what season you're in, if it's like the rainy season, that water can get pretty intense, and people do drown. They get thrown out of the raft, and I don't know, they just drown. And you gotta watch the rain volume quite closely, and a lot of times they have to cancel the whitewater rafting because the water will just be too intense. Now, tonight I want to do a little bit of talking about outside of politics and the collapsing West and all that, which I've I mean, let's be honest. I've covered that ad nauseum on the Talamanca Review. You can just go if you're new. If you came over after the Robert Phoenix show, just go and listen to my back catalog. If you can't find everything on Substack, it's all over on YouTube. Same title, the Talamanca Review. And you'll see my thoughts on everything there. I've been very, very open and very consistent for the last 6 years about what's going on this planet. And there is a lot of irony. That's my most popular podcast, by the way, is The Ironic Mirror. I don't know why that one took off, but it's got several thousand views. The irony is that we believe we're living in a secular society, but we're actually run by a highly disciplined religion. And this is not a public-facing religion. It's an amalgamation of certain groups and consensuses achieved through the study of secret society material, the vast bulk of which is coming off of the Kabbalah. I mean, they can throw other stuff in there, like the Egyptian Book of the Dead and Hermes Trismegistus and things like this, and say that it's not really Jewish. But when you get into the higher initiations, it's all Kabbalah. It's all Kabbalah. And this religion is trying to reset the world. And I think this is their job. I think they've been doing this for a long time. And through their agency, meaning their incarnate selves, they work with some very powerful astral forces that also participate in the destruction. And this I think is the aspect of it that confuses so many people. They can, like, when you look at all of the analysis that's out there, like just before I started my podcast, I was watching Michael Yon, go on about the Charlie Kirk assassination. If you don't know who Michael Yon is, he is a very interesting commentator. He's a war veteran and a Green Beret. One of the more publicly unrepresented special forces in the podcasting world. They're all seem to be SEALs for the most part, Sean Ryan being the most successful of them. And, there's a lot of political analysis, economic analysis, gaming out, warfare, Sun Tzu, the art of war, the Chinese threat. And believe me, I do find that stuff interesting. Having a journalism degree, I sort of like the rugby aspect of what's going on in the world, just grabbing the ball and knocking heads with a bunch of people on a muddy field. I get it. As a man, I get the appeal of it. But as I consistently point out on the Talamanca Review, you cannot really understand what is going on until you understand the astral influence and human agency. Okay? So when the Creator sets up a region or a realm, let's call it a realm because I don't want to alienate flat earth or round earth people. I myself think it's shaped like a football or a turtle. That's what I was shown in meditation when I asked. So it's neither flat nor round as far as I'm concerned. But to get zeroed in on the topic, when a realm is set up, a stewardship of that realm is handed out. Okay? And what I mean by a stewardship is the people who are the rulers or the caretakers, or let's call it the most responsible consciousness in the realm, the most visibly evolved consciousness in the realm. And I don't mean to be chauvinistic here. I'm not trying to put down some of the highly evolved mammalian sea life like dolphins and whales, because there's something mysterious and magical going on there. There's no doubt about it. But we are the stewards of the land. And I go over this ad nauseum in a 3-part podcast called Land and Man that you can go back and watch. And it's our job to take care of this realm. And we're supposed to connect our consciousness with higher forces that can aid us. And ultimately, those higher forces and beings in the consciousness ladder lead all the way back to the Creator, which is the source of life outside of time and space. Now, the religious paradigm we've been straitjacketed into tells us that commiserating with these mid-tier beings on other dimensions, if they're also conscripted to serving the earth, and the elementals are for sure, that it is heresy, blasphemy, and paganism to commiserate with these forces. I don't feel that way. However, I have noted that people who get into that don't evolve beyond it. And remember, if you're in the consciousness game, you're trying to get back to the Creator. Okay? When you start a university degree, you're supposed to finish it. You're supposed to get your honors degree in 4 years. When you start a master's degree, you're supposed to finish it. You get awarded the title Master of Business, Master of Psychology. And the same thing for a PhD. You don't stop in the 3rd year and say, okay, I'm going to stay in the 3rd year and not leave the university, but not evolve beyond the 3rd year. That's my clumsy metaphor for people who get involved in pre-Abrahamic religious expression, that the longing for the Creator sort of gets supplanted by the magical enchantment of interacting with these mid-tier beings. And that is not spiritually productive. So I would agree with somebody like Bishop Barron on that, probably the most public-facing Catholic bishop. But that doesn't mean that you can't engage the elementals to help you with your crops and to help you harmonize with the land you live on. In fact, you should. And so that cleaving of that relationship by the Abrahamic thuggery, which has dominated us since the Romans were stupid enough to take up the Catholic religion, which existed before Christ. The Romans were trying to create an amalgamated universal religion before the appearance of Christ. Not many people know that. And it was called the Catholic religion. And then they just stuck Christ in there and boom, appropriated all of the Hebraic teachings and said, we're the new shit, and ran things that way for about, according to our history, about 1,500 years. Until some clever German dude invented the printing press, and then all hell broke loose and general literacy shot through the roof. from the 1500s to the 20th century. And I mean, prior to that, there would be no need to read because there were no books other than books that would be written on whatever manually fabricated paper was around. Maybe a lot of the monasteries probably were involved in pulping paper and creating paper sheets and very primitive forms of bookbinding. But they would do it in such a way that the book would last for hundreds of years. You know, it was really well done, leather cover, and they would do a really thick page. And then every page of the Bible would have to be written out with either a feather quill or some form of writing instrument and a, what do you call it, an ink bowl. Think about that. Okay, so that, you know, when you think about literacy, think about that. Now, there's a double-edged sword to language, because when language becomes manifest, it becomes another kind of psychological limitation. The human consciousness expresses itself way beyond written and spoken language. And when language comes to dominate in a society, it becomes one of the first limitations on the growth of consciousness. Okay? And this is why so many of the spiritual and religious traditions in both the East and the West have silent orders where people don't speak, because it was recognized that language had become an internal barrier to your consciousness going further. And so, like, even when I go into meditation, you know, the first 10 minutes or so, I still have language going around my consciousness, like a pair of jeans with a couple quarters in the pocket rattling around a clothes dryer. And it takes a while to settle down. And then when the language goes away, you got to be very careful you don't fall asleep. Watch your sleeping patterns when you put your head down on a pillow. Okay? Try to gauge the time that your consciousness goes beyond language. Because there will be a brief period of time where you're aware of it, you're not yet asleep. And that is a magical state of consciousness. That is the beginning of samadhi, which, you know, the meditative trance state. But most people, they can't capture it. It's only a few minutes, okay, from the loss of language to you stop thinking, but you're not quite asleep yet. You can still hear the cats outside your window, but the language is gone in your head. And the same thing happens in meditation, right? And then you go into these altered states. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight is the correct state of mind and the correct state of being to go through the difficulties that we're going to have to go through. And they're unavoidable now. Nothing can reverse them, right? Maybe they were written already, but, you know, I'm going to extend my cigar smoking a few more weeks. I'm really enjoying it. And you only live, you know, enjoy your body a little bit. Horrible habit, horrible example, I know, but it is what it is. So, one of the things that I try to do in the Talamanca Review is bridge the gap between the East and the West, which I think I'm capable of doing because I've been studying and practicing and reading for a long time now. All kinds of texts and manuscripts and biographies and firsthand left spiritual testimony like Milarepa and stuff like that. And On the surface, they seem very, very different. But I think really at the end of the day, they're the same thing. Now, in the Eastern system, there generally isn't a God. There are gods. And the gods live in the middle kingdom between matter and pure spirit. In the Kabbalah, there's a creator, but they say don't even bother. It's inaccessible. And there are, much like the Hindu system, the Kabbalah creates or accesses intermediaries between man and the creator. A living avatar can be such a mediator, like a Buddha, like a Christ. But it's best if you're alive when they're incarnate. Okay? It's very difficult to get the energy and to understand what they were really saying, and most importantly, feel them. Okay? Because an avatar, a high consciousness human being, they're like a cell tower, or like almost like a sun in a body. And I mean sun as a solar body. A star that sustains a solar system. There's an energy that comes off them that is very powerful. And if you've never felt it, it's very difficult to understand what they mean by divine love. In fact, it's almost impossible, okay? And this is why I favor lineage paths. And a lineage path is a path that replicates the consciousness of its inceptor, the inception avatar, in every generation. Now, the way they set up Christianity is degrading to human beings. It degrades us. And it was used as a control system. And the control went something like this when the Vatican was in charge. Who are you talking about your budding consciousness? Who are you to talk about spirituality? You're still loaded with human flaws and sin. We have our perfect Son of God to guide us. Who are you to speak publicly? And it persists to this day. The priests and the pastors and the ministers, they don't speak for themselves. They speak as scholars of the Bible. Pundits. In India, they call these people pundits. In the Hindu system, a pundit is a scholar who studies the Holy Scriptures and can speak eloquently about them in a scholarly sense. And we imported that word and we use it all the time now. So we call somebody a political pundit, right? Which means they're not in the game, but they're an excellent commentator. Now in India, they still have the living representatives in the lineage systems. High consciousness people. Sadhguru is a fairly evolved person. I don't think he's God conscious. And there I am using that word again. But what I mean when I say that word is you've sort of mastered or transcended all the sheaths, the physical, the sensual, the mnemonic, and the mental. And these are bodies. They're like internal layers to the physicality. So man is a 5-body system, which is why we have 5 fingers. Okay? It's a 5-body system. And so there's the physical body, the sensual or astral body, the mnemonic or memory or causal body, and the universal mind body. So the individual human mind connects to the universal mind in limited capacity, right? And some people become much more mentally lit up than the rest of us, but it doesn't mean that they're spiritual people. They may be compassionate. And then the fifth body is the body that is the same as the body of the Creator, which is pure spirit. Okay? Now, when the Bible talks about these entities or beings, whether they be angels or demons, as being pure spirit, I'm going to be a bit of a pundit here. They're not. They're spirit mixed with psychic components, because they wouldn't be able to exist in the psychic realms, and they exist in the psychic realms. And we know this because angels can manifest in our thoughts and in our dreams and in our lives. And therefore they have a psychic constitution as well. So they're not pure spirit. They're spirit mixed with the psychic bodies, the mental, the causal, and the sensual or astral body. So the Catholic Church is wrong about that. Demons are not pure spirit either. They're non-physical, but as soon as we leave the body, people start using the word spirit, and they forgo psychic. So these three bodies between the spiritual body, the astral, the sensual astral, mnemonic, memory, or causal, and the mental or Luciferian body, we'll call it, those all have psychic properties. And what they do is they help contain your individuality. And this is why the angels are named. Because when you get up into the spirit, everything is the same. There's very little, it's like one drop of water trying to distinguish itself from all the other drops in an ocean. How do you do that? Right? And so the individual consciousness becomes a molecule of the body of God. Okay? And to get to that stage, you have to surrender all the other stuff and be able to let go of it. Most people can't do it. Most people can't let go of their physical body to go into the astral. And, I want to experience astral travel, but they can't let go of their physical, so they can't go into the astral. Most people can't let go of their astral if they can get there to go into the causal. And most people can't let go of their causal bodies to get into the mental. And then the most difficult body to let go of, the final death, is the mental. I call it the Luciferian body, because Lucifer's up there. Satan's down on the astral. Satan likes to hang around in the blood and guts and the shit. And Lucifer could sit and discuss Shakespeare and quantum theory with you and have a tea with you. And you'd think, this Lucifer's, why are they shitting on this guy? He's not a bad guy at all. Where am I going with all this? I get lost in my own podcast. Do you believe that? Oh, yeah. I was going to try and give some counsel tonight on how to get through these coming difficult years. The most important thing will seem illogical. Because when it gets really difficult, you're going to be in a survival situation. I don't know what form that will take for most people. A lot of people are going to have to change the way they live. A lot of people are going to have to move in with other people. We're going to have to become like Indians, where, you've got 10 people living in a 3-bedroom house. You got mattresses everywhere, and everybody eats in the kitchen, and, and I'm not putting down Indians. I mean, they don't have that big a landmass, and there's like 1.5 billion of them. Holy spamoly, did you ever spook me there? Go on now. What are you doing loose? Holy spamoly. My little girl. This is Lulu. She's just all affection. But savage little creature too, if the wrong person comes on the property. Yeah, I'm podcasting, okay? Yeah, there you go. Good girl. I guess my wife just let her off the leash, although, well, it's only 10:05. Rosemary might still be up. And so, the most important thing that you're going to have to remember as we go through this time is number one, oh, yeah, I was talking about like lifestyle changes. It's going to get like, I mean, how do you get through this? You know, and people have been talking about this coming time for some time now, you know, and the question becomes, how are you going to get through it? Some people will have to go back to family. This is where the baby boomers who are still alive are going to have to become leaders and allow children and grandchildren to return home and live in a very crowded and uncomfortable situation, like the Chinese, like Nicaraguans, like, well, my wife. They were raised in a very small home with 11 kids. You can't imagine, you know? And the Indians and everybody who doesn't have a lot of money, they live with much less personal space. This is something that we forget as North Americans. North Americans, Canadians, and when we say North America now, geographically and legally, it technically includes Mexico. I'm not including Mexico. When I say North America, I mean the United States and Canada. Have you ever stopped to realize that as a culture, from the baby boomers onward, we created, well, maybe even the parents of the baby boomers, the World War II generation, but we created the largest personal space per person on the planet and the largest energy consumption per person on the planet. And this comes from heating 2,000 square foot homes. This comes from air conditioning 2,000 square foot homes. This comes from moving to dryers and washing machines instead of hanging our clothes up on a clothesline. Our streets, the traffic. For those of you who've traveled, been around the world, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you can't even imagine the traffic in New Delhi, India. There's like 24, 25 million people in one city. That's half the population of California in one city. Okay? And the concept of personal space goes away in places like that, and you enter into a kind of a hive mind. One of the things I like about Costa Ricans is because of their agricultural roots, they have really preserved the concept of personal space. Now, this doesn't mean they'll live in big and expensive homes, but it does mean that their neighbors may be 500 meters away. You know, we don't even have that in North America or Australia or New Zealand anymore. Most times now, the space between two houses, you could almost touch both walls. They're built so closely together now. And then you'll have a little strip of land you call your backyard, and a little strip of land, smaller strip of land you'll call your front yard, and half of your front yard will be taken up by asphalt or interlocking brick for your 4-car driveway. And that's the way it goes. That might have to go away, although I don't know how it's going to go away. You know, but people will just not have the revenue. The millennials, many of the Gen Xers are screwed in their retirement, man. I mean, it was a stroke of genius that I came over here and did what I did for long-term comfort into my 80s. Many of my friends in their 50s now in Canada, they're not going to be able to retire well because they're using all their money to maintain. And now there may be a generational thing here, like the Chinese do that. the parents don't hoard money from the children. All of the money is invested into the children to get the most out of them, and then the children are expected to take care of the parents in old age. It's kind of beautiful, actually. When I was in Taiwan, one of the things that I noted was it was much cheaper to run their hospitals, because they had like maybe 1/10 the number of nurses, similar number of doctors for operations and examinations and all that stuff. But where they really cut down in the Taiwanese hospitals was in the nurses. And here's how they did it. When the grandmother or grandfather is in the hospital, the grandchildren go after school and give them the sponge bath, change their beds, feed them, spend time with them, and do all the stuff the nurses would do. It has to be done by the family. Isn't that interesting? Now, one of the things that is exacerbating the idea of the challenges we're going to be going through, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of death for sure, but that's, to me, it's not a big deal. I'm sorry if I seem cold saying that. I'm not trying to be cold. Death is a magnificent thing in which the mission you came into the world to do is finished, and you get to go to the better place because it's better over there. So I don't really think death is a bad thing. But what is really shocking and calamitous for Westerners, let me finish the idea of personal space. The Europeans lived with far less personal space. They use little wooden or metal things to hang up their their laundry after the heavy water and the dripping water is spun out of it. They hang it up in their apartments. They hang it up in their flats in London and Paris. They don't have dryers, right? So the idea of convenience and the idea of the middle class family castle with all of the convenience was really just Canada, United States, Australia, and New Zealand. The Europeans didn't even have it. They didn't have the land. Okay? They just didn't have the land, and they didn't have the virgin economy of construction, because when you're building out a country, there's a lot of work. And so you can do things a certain way. A lot of it maybe wasn't done correctly. For example, I mean, Toronto wasn't built correctly. They're packing so many people into that city now. They're going to have huge problems with congestion and all sorts of things. And so one of the things that's, I think, going to go away is the idea of this personal space and disposable income, and the whole idea of how you live. It's all changing right in front of our eyes in real time. Used to be a very simple model for our grandparents and our parents. You get married, you buy a house. Most countries do not have capital gains when you sell your primary residence. So when the kids are gone and you get and you keep the home for a couple decades after the kids leave it, so that the kids and the grandkids can come back for vacation, Christmas, Hanukkah, Easter, Passover, stuff like this. And then the parents release the home, and the equity in the home becomes the nest egg to guide them through the last couple decades or decade and a half of their life, if that, depending on when they sell their home. My dad died like within 5 years of leaving the house I was raised in, right? And so that equity becomes the retirement nest egg. And if it's properly managed, the children and the grandchildren get an inheritance to help them. But the way things are going now, it's not really working out that way. And it's causing a lot of panic in people. I talked about a few podcasts about the baby boomers. The baby boomers, for the most part, the baby boomers are okay for retirement. Okay? They had a really, really robust economy for most of their working decades, and most of them are pretty settled up. Okay? Gen X is going to be a different story because Gen X absorbed the transition, but there was enough money in the Gen X generation to maintain. But a lot of Gen Xers, they didn't put enough away into 401ks and stuff like this, and they're going to be hurting when they retire. And it's going to be a huge issue as well. Not to worry, though. Medical assistance in dying is available. You can just kill yourself, right? I don't mean to be cynical when I say that, but why? They're hoping for this. Believe me when I tell you, they're hoping people become psychologically despondent and kill themselves. So the best way to get through the calamity that's coming is to be flexible. And you're going to have to accept that there's going to be changes. And we're going to be called upon to do things that maybe this culture and cult of individuality doesn't want to do. Because we've become also, along with the personal space we created in North American society, we've become the most individuated, and in that individuation, the most alienated from connectivity with family. And by connectivity with family, I mean they live together. So where I live with my wife, Rosemary, there's 4 generations just in this pueblo. There's my mother-in-law, who's in her late 70s now. There are her children. There are their children who are grown up now. And there are great-grandchildren as well. So it's 4 generations. I think we might even, are we even into great-great-grand? No, I don't think we're into great-great-grandchildren yet. And so there's this, so you have my mother-in-law growing old. She lives in this beautiful location. And she's got all her family around her. She's got her daughters visiting her every day. My wife spends 2 to 4 hours with her every day. And her sisters are over there. And, they just love being together. And why wouldn't they? They were raised in a tiny house with 11 kids and 2 parents. So they got it all squared away over here. They take care of each other. And I chip in too. I'm the only one in the family with vehicles. These fucking wingnuts borrow my vehicles and none of them have licenses. I'm the only one with a vehicle. So I do, when I go grocery shopping, there's usually a second list. It's usually stuff my mother-in-law needs. And we buy it and we bring it to her. I have to take care of the nieces and nephews. I'm the only one with enough disposable income to get them those critical things they really want, like a cell phone when they're 14. And I think it's pretty important in this age, 2025, to have a cell phone when you're 14. And I don't mind doing it. I've never felt better about myself and my contribution to a family than I do here in Costa Rica. Other than my devotion to my son, I've never had anything like this in my life. And I'm telling you, it feels really good. It feels really good to be part of the whole machine and to fit in and to be able to help people and all of these things. My brother-in-law is going to make about, 5,000, 4,500, 5,000 US. Building this house for me over the next 2 months. It's not all going in his pocket. He's going to have to pay assistance and stuff, but he's going to do very well. He'll be able to clean up his child support and everything. I get a house built. I don't have to deal with any union bullshit or anything like that. Everybody wins. I've learned so much over here, And when I think back of my time in Canada and the way everything is done, and how selfish everybody is, the first world has become very selfish in its radical individualism, very selfish. And so my simple solution to how you go forward is stay balanced, stay grounded, and always think about love. That would be the daily spiritual exercise, okay? So you have focused spiritual exercise where you sit down and you do your formal meditation, your chanting if you do that, or your prayers if you do that. That could be anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours a day. And then throughout the day, you should have spiritual exercises you're doing. And the one that's going to be very important now is constantly recentering yourself on service, to deliberately compromise this radical radical sense of individuality that you have. And that's going to help get you through this, believe me. It's going to be tough, but there's so much fat in the Western system that everybody should be able to make it. You're just going to have to go back to, 1910, 1915, the two-bedroom Irish flat in Brooklyn with 9 kids. The way our great-grandparents were raised. And all of this material nonsense, and it's going away. And the people most invested in it are going to see it through a distorted lens. They're not going to see the good in it. They're just going to see the bad. Oh, this is what I'm losing. And oh, this is what I have to give up. And nah. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. The spiritual way to look at it is, what do I gain here? If you're a baby boomer, you're going to get to be a real provider and somebody that can take care of people for the next decade or 15 years. And they're going to need it. Gen Xers, same thing. And the millennials and Gen Z, they're going to have to coattail off the other 2 generations and try to fold into their families and go forward. But it doesn't have to be as calamitous as people are saying. It doesn't have to be as calamitous as people are saying. Well, I think that's about enough tonight. Bit of a rambling podcast. I think I'll title it Coping Through the Chaos or Coping Through Chaos. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.